Hi, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening to everyone. So thank you for joining us this evening at the closing dinner for our Bloomberg Technology Summit. Whether you're joining us virtually or here in the room, we are really excited to have you. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge our presenting sponsor, Chrome Enterprises, for making this evening possible. Our theme for tonight is moving from defense to offense, keeping your organization safe on the web, with the aim to bring you conversations with some of the most influential voices in tech and cybersecurity to expand on solutions to detect, protect, and recover from potential threats. For those of you in the room today, please enjoy your dinner and feel free to take notes. For our virtual audiences, if you experience any issues with audio or video quality, try to refresh your browser and use the chat box at the bottom right of your screen for support. Please engage with us on the social media using the hashtag BloombergTech. And you can see more of today's coverage for the event live by following Bloomberg Live on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or if you have a Bloomberg terminal, look for us on the function Live Go. I'd like to introduce Lauren Miskelly, Managing Director and GTM Lead at Chrome Browser Enterprise, who will make some remarks. Thank you all again for joining us, and take it away, Lauren.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. What a great day of content. Hope you all enjoyed it. For folks who don't know me, I'm Lauren Miskelly, and I'm the Managing Director for Chrome Enterprise at Google. We're really excited to be sponsoring this event and dinner tonight. The topic of tonight, as Diksha said, is moving from defense to offense, keeping your organization safe on the web. We have a great panel of security leaders that will be talking about this on the web. Security leaders, and will be talking about this. Like I mentioned, I'm from Chrome Enterprise, so web security is always top of mind for us. We've seen cyber threats evolve more and more over the past few years, and with more being done on the browser and through web-based apps, browser security has become a huge topic for IT and security teams. Our philosophy for Chrome is to provide built-in security for users. We like to think of this security as security you don't have to think about, plus additional capabilities for enterprises that allow access controls for IT and security teams to customize the browser. We truly want these teams to see Chrome as a key piece of their tech stack to help secure their corporate data. So tonight we'll hear from industry leaders on how they look to the web to keep their organization secure while keeping employees productive, which we all know is a balance for IT teams are all tasked with. So enjoy your dinner, enjoy the topics tonight, and I will hand it back to Diksha.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. Just a little factoid. Did you know that over half the general passwords can be hacked in under 1 minute? Did you know that? 65% of passwords can be hacked within 1 hour, and 80% over passwords can be hacked within a month. That's some food for thought. And without much ado, let me invite the next panelists, Sri Shivananda, who's the CTO at PayPal, with our very own Ed Ludlow.
Sri, they're not here for me, mates, now.
I lost my way.
Yes. Testing 1, 2, good evening. Everyone that's in the room, and for those of you not in the room, there is a room full of people looking at both of us, and you can take my word for it. Today's been awesome. Almost every discussion has been about artificial intelligence. But what I've learned on the show, Bloomberg Technology, since November of last year, is that you can very quickly find the intersection of artificial intelligence and all of the considerations that Sri has to make right now as a CTO, and yes, that includes cybersecurity. So The title of our discussion is Moving from Defense to Offense, which sounds awesome. Keeping your organization safe on the web. With you, it's kind of a next level because you are one of, on some measures, the biggest handler of payments in multiple different currencies, assets, and jurisdictions in the world. Bit of feedback, guys. Whoa, it's not me.
It could be the feedback, so. Okay.
But before we lose track, let's start with the defense. You're the CTO of PayPal. You have your customer data and money at stake. Where are the threats? It is the accent, and clearly I am a threat. Now that Shri is still on the defense, where are the threats coming from to your mind and in your world, Shri?
When you think of cybersecurity, whether you think of the breadth of attacks, whether you think of the sophistication of attacks, whether you think of the intensity of attacks, the frequency of attacks, all of that has been increasing. And what we got with the early days of the pandemic was the largest remote work experiment ever. And it threw us into a new paradigm on what it meant to protect the enterprise, what it meant to protect your customers, and so on. Fortunately, for those of us that had invested in getting to that place, it was not that hard. Within weeks, we were in a place where we felt confident about our risk posture and what we did with security and such. You have to keep in mind that for a site like PayPal, or for that matter, anybody who's doing business on the internet, the attacks are continuous. I can't even say there's an attack every second. It's just continuous. And it happens at various different levels. It could be a bored student in a college dorm, or on the other extreme, a nation state. That could be on the other side of the attack. Just like we run businesses and companies that have a purpose, cybercrime by itself has become an industry of its own. It is an enterprise on its own. The technologies we have, the folks on the other side have too. And there are various strategies we apply to that. And given that the breadth of attacks, the depth of attacks, the sophistication of attacks, the risk from the attacks, and the intensity of attacks are increasing, this is one of those things where what was good yesterday is not good enough today.
Well,
and so you have to be
let me jump in here. I don't want you to give away the secret sauce to the hackers, but how is PayPal vulnerable? You know, in its very nature as a global transactions and payments giant, what is it that you have to defend against, technologically speaking?
A lot of different things, right? I would say, look, if you look at the medium on which we all conduct business today, the internet was created for a certain purpose. And it grew over time, and we started to reuse it for many other things. It started for content, but we started to put commerce on it, we started to put payments on it, and things of that nature. It was not built for that in its original inception. So over time, we've had to re-architect, reimagine, re-engineer, redo technologies that we used to be on the internet to conduct that. But let's step back and understand what we are truly in the business of. Yes, we are a payments company, but you have to keep in mind, we are actually in the business of trust. The only thing that people value more than their money is their life. The second thing that they value most is the money. And given that we are in the business of money, and keeping that trust is the most important thing, that makes it priority number one within technology to have universe-class security. And that's, I mean, yes, the mission is to democratize financial services, but from a technology perspective, our number one focus is security.
When we think about fintech in the context of the show, we talk often about how fintech is disrupting legacy finance or legacy transaction systems, and that then takes my mind to crypto. And I wonder in the first instance if the decentralized nature of crypto and the underlying technology that allows for it has made your life more complicated as CTO, or has aided you in moving from defense to offense?
Look, the world of crypto actually solved a certain segment of the payments problem. Let me step back. And what I can tell you is, and you've noticed this, over the last 2 decades, there's been a lot of innovation in the top layer of what payments is. The experience has evolved significantly, and it has become so convenient. So when you talk about digital currencies, most of us have been using digital currencies for a long period of time ahead of crypto, right? It's not like we've been using cash that much. What crypto originally was an answer for is to think of that substrate of payments. So if you're all Stranger Things fans, it's the underside of payments. That part has not changed in a rather big way over a long period of time.
It sounds as if you're suggesting that it needs to.
It absolutely needs to. If you actually look, whether it is in terms of the cost of payments, the convenience of payments, the speed of payments, or for that matter, the reach of payments in terms of financial inclusion, that underlying substrate has to change over time to be able to support a significantly larger scale.
And in the security context?
In the security context, that means a whole lot of things. You have to keep in mind that when you think of managing money, it is not just the underlying rails of moving the money, but it's various layers that you apply on top of that. Like, yes, it is the ledger, but is ledger the only system that you have to build for payments? Absolutely not. There is so much more you need to do. It's a complex ecosystem of technologies. The crypto ledgers solved a certain problem, and they're on now generation 3, and they're solving certain scale issues that were an issue with the first generations. But when you take the large end-to-end aspect of what payments is all about, that requires to integrate technologies like what the distributed ledgers provided, but also take various other aspects of how settlements occur, how regulations work, what it means to actually keep your customers safe, your company safe, your jurisdictional rules applied at every time. I think that takes a lot of effort to layer on top of what you have as the distributed ledger.
For those in the room, show of hands, how many of you work in the field of cybersecurity? And for those joining virtually, tweet me at Ed Ludlow, hashtag Bloomberg Tech. I'd be really interested to know the audience. Artificial intelligence. What I heard a lot from your industry in cybersecurity is that we need to acknowledge that the threat actors have access to the same technology that we believe we can use to take the offense in preventing crime, or cybersecurity threats. Summarize that for me.
Look, I agree with you that the technologies that are available to enterprises, people and companies that want to put it to good use are also available to those that want to use it for different purposes. There's no doubt about that. And as I mentioned to you before, when I think about security postures, I think of 3 things. One, I mentioned already that what's good yesterday it's not good enough today. You need to continue to innovate in the security area to keep all actors in the system safe.
That's your job.
That's the job. That's
CTO.
That's one of the main jobs that we have. But at the same time, let me talk about 2 more things. There's been a step function shift in the perception of what AI can do, particularly with the introduction of large language models and the bigger access that you have to consumer at this point in time. And that comes with a lot of opportunities in what you can do from a product perspective, an experience perspective, an efficiency perspective, and a productivity perspective. But with that also comes the paradigm of, look, how do you make sure that with that technology and that power, you still continue to keep trust with your customers at the levels that you've kept it at? And so you will see innovation in AI in 2 areas. One, in harnessing the power of what AI can do for the business, for the customer, for the experience. But another one in the area of how do you make it human? How do you make it trustworthy? How do you make it believable? How do you make it seamless? How do you actually hide it behind the actual value that you want to deliver?
The connotations of what you've outlined seem to suggest that that would be a great tool to a threat actor to disguise identity, to aid in phishing. You know, it seems strange in this day and age to talk about phishing, but you know, telling the difference between AI-generated content and human-generated content. I think for our audience, and by the way, those that showed hands in the room, many of you are in the field of cybersecurity. So give us, as much as you can, a concrete example of how PayPal is using a generative AI tool or not a large language model in the cybersecurity context or otherwise.
Yeah, look, I mean, every enterprise at this point in time has a lot of signals that it collects from a cybersecurity perspective, whether this is logs or metrics and so on. Hidden in there are things that you can actually run rules on and find out, but a lot of unknowns in terms of behavioral trends that could exist. So what you could apply this technology on is that exhaust of information that you're getting in terms of summarizing in ways that they are actionable. That becomes a possibility with what some of the large language models can do, taking unstructured information that comes from logs, applying this technology to it, and then leveraging that for actions that you need to take in protecting the information that you have and the customers that you're serving to.
So at the halfway point of this, I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about Shri and what I've been able to learn about you. You are the Chief Technology Officer of PayPal. That's a good place to start. But when you were a kid, I believe that you wanted to be an Air Force pilot in India.
That's right.
And at some point in your life, you were offered a choice. You had your leather jacket on and someone said, you can have a motorcycle or you can buy a computer. Which did you choose?
I bought a computer. That's what I did.
You also
there was logic behind it because every single friend of mine who was the same age had a motorcycle. Nobody had a computer. So it became a simple economic decision to say, 1 hour of computer is going to get me 1 day of motorcycle. So that was
Shri also speaks 5 languages, 4 languages?
I understand 5, I speak 4.
So this is me building up to this question, and it's loosely related to the topic of our discussion this evening. The CTO is back. Like, that is what I'm hearing, that the advent of AI in the enterprise, SaaS, payments landscape, it's made the CTO, you, like the hero of the boardroom.
Well, look, I mean, I'm a geek, I'm a systems thinker, and I don't think that any particular role in the company is disproportionately important by itself. That's my belief. But at the same time, given what's happening with technology and how, if you look at the last 2 decades, even more than that, and look forward as well, technology is the main unlock in what's happening in terms of the business. So the technology stakeholder at the company is a very important role. To be able to make informed, intelligent choices with the right kind of approaches in how you harness the power of the evolution of technology for the cause of the business, for the purpose of the business in the right ways.
Was anyone here in the room at CES in January, or anyone attending virtually tweeted me? One of the conversations we had there was with Jen Easterly, the director of CISA. And the call that she made was that private business needs to do a lot more to take ownership in the field of cybersecurity. Do you recognize, the leadership of your company taking AI as seriously as cybersecurity and vice versa? What is the priority, or are they just interlinked?
These are 2 of the thousands of aspects that you need to consider in running a technology portfolio, right? And when you think of AI presents an opportunity. It also presents risks in many ways that you have to understand and deal with. Cybersecurity is going to be, both are going to be evergreen aspects of a technology strategy at any company, all towards serving the customer, doing the right thing by the customer, but building the right products. And in doing so, you have to take a strategy that used to be mostly at the edge in terms of what you did with cybersecurity. Every one of us has now built defense in depth. You've gone deep in that process. Most of us dealt with security in a reactive fashion on the right-hand side. Every single one of us has shifted it more and more left over time. And so now you've gone from security being this thing that you dealt with when you had a problem to saying you're designing based on security as a principle. You're going back to first principles foundations, and you're designing security into everything that you're doing.
It's a good thing this is called from defense to offense then. You are pretty much, PayPal that is, the only US at least payments company that has a license to operate in China. From a data perspective and a cybersecurity perspective, how does that complicate your job?
Yeah, so what we did with our partnership there in China is that we built a full replica of the PayPal infrastructure in China. It's fully isolated. All of the transactions related to Chinese citizens are in that. It's firewalled, sandboxed, and separated from the global infrastructure. We actually have separate teams that work on our China business and China instance, and the rest of the world business and the rest of the world instance. People who work on one don't actually have access to the other. While we are a part of the same company, we have the same culture, we have the same values, we have the same purpose.
The same technology?
The same technology as well. So in fact, what we've done is we are a global platform. We built our software in a way that can actually run in multiple instances. And this is the first time we had to create a second instance of what we're running, but we've created a fully separated instance in how we manage that. And this is what you have to keep in mind, particularly in businesses like payments, and maybe many of you are in other businesses that are similar. Regulations is a very important aspect. Paying attention to jurisdictions and the rules that those jurisdictions apply, and making sure that the technology you build complies with that is an important part of what you do as a technologist. And towards that, that's the approach that we have taken. Part of that is serving our customers in China. Part of that is serving our customers in the rest of the world. In many cases, the interactions between them as well.
From a technology perspective, you know, your secret sauce is, however you want to put it, a lot of investors are looking at Apple and what Apple's doing with Apple Pay. Apple really leans into the security and encryption level of its services. How do you stay ahead of an Apple in that respect? Keep innovating on the underlying platform.
Yeah, I don't know how many people know this, but some of the early roots of PayPal was actually in cryptography. We were a security company long before we were a payments company. We, on top of principles like defense in depth, we've always believed in the concept of paranoid computing. So when two servers or two applications within our data centers or within our cloud infrastructure talk to each other, they treat each other as hostile. So I know there's been a lot of conversation about there used to be a perimeter and we are all going perimeterless and so on. We took a little bit of a different philosophy. We said every aspect of the fleet, every single application, every single server, every single human being has a perimeter. And everything that you do in your infrastructure, in your applications, in your social ecosystem, even within the company, has to be explicit in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And that is something that we've been doing for 2 decades. So look, the culture of any company is a combination of the mindset that we have within the company, the philosophies that we pursue, the technologies we build with those, the architectures we put out, and what kind of like a social culture you build. And we have been a security-first company for a long period of time, and that is absolutely one of our biggest assets in terms of the service we provide.
for a long period of time, a security-focused company. Let's look forward to finish. PayPal will have a new CEO at some point. As the CTO, how do you think and prepare for how that changes the company's technology priorities, that process and that unknown?
Well, actually, look, when you think about technology strategies, they have to be leader agnostic. You have a purpose of the company, you know the business you're in, you see the trends that are coming your way, you see the threats that come your way, and you create a strategy based on that. A new leader coming in, one, would educate themselves not only on the business, but like all aspects of how we do technology, what our competitive advantages are, and so on. Today, we didn't get to talk much about the layers of security, whether like all the way from volumetric defense on the top to the fraud engines that we build on the inside.
Well, we'll squeeze out one piece of bonus time. If there's one thought about that, the layers of technology that you can leave our audience here and virtually, how should they think about the security of the PayPal platform?
Well, look, I mean, one is, as I mentioned to you, security is the #1 priority in technology at companies like ours. That is something that we take very seriously. It's a competitive advantage. We build in believing in building universe-class technology, learning every single day. And what it means is to take every aspect of what you have as the technology ecosystem, building model-driven understanding, as in like forming digital twins, and making sure that every aspect, every part of that fleet is a perimeter by itself, and protecting it based on strong contracts, like least privileges approach, zero trust architectures, and various other things. But security is something that you need to apply to every aspect in technology, and I think doing that means a solid set of philosophies, good principles, good architecture, good innovation in engineering, and just a continuous pursuit of excellence.
Our audience here and virtually, Sri Shivananda, CTO of PayPal, really informative. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so up next, Bloomberg Intelligence's Deeksha Gera. She and I actually sit next to each other in the office. And you know, she's got such a command of such a broad range of subject matter, but this next panel, really excited. It's about these strategies for effective cybersecurity. Coming up, Deputy Chief Security Officer and SVP at MasterCard, Alyssa Dr. J. Abdullah, and LinkedIn CISO, Jeff Belknap. Welcome.
Ooh. That's what happens when we meet.
Well, thank you so much. I'm actually gonna. I don't think so.
Maybe.
Check. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Check.
Okay, I think I'm loud enough. Am I? Yeah. So I'm going to take a leaf out of what Sri just mentioned, and we're kind of entering a new paradigm on cybersecurity. So there's a secular shift away from just securing the main entrance of your house, right? Like putting a lock on your front door, making bigger, heavier gates, putting bigger locks, putting a camera out there. And we're moving from that regime into today's enterprises, where you're moving to a more open and modular tech infrastructure. And when you have partners connecting with you, your systems, your data via APIs, and your staff is growing exponentially in size, right? Just the number of people accessing your data and systems has accelerated. In this environment, you don't even know who the bad actor is. So you got to prepare accordingly. There is no periphery to protect, really. There is no main gate that you can lock in. In this setup, we are kind of transitioning into a more, so to say, zero trust architecture model, if you can call it that, right? which could become the de facto model for enterprise security as cyber attacks become more sophisticated. And it also kind of highlights the inefficacy of just the on-prem firewall kind of a security tactic, right? So you're not necessarily adding more friction to your entry point, but you're watching all parts of your house. You're monitoring people as they come in, and you're deciding who the bad actors are based on what they're doing in your house, how are they behaving, right? This transition is obvious in market trends, where we see makers of on-prem firewalls with an antivirus software, they're gradually losing ground to cloud companies that deploy products with zero trust model. But just looking at the bigger picture, how has the battleground changed from defense to offense? So really psyched to have Dr. Jay and Jeff on the panel today to talk about what they are learning from their fight against cybercrime and how the contours of this industry are evolving. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Alisa. When people talk about cybersecurity, the usual suspects that come to mind are the infrastructure providers, the Ciscos of the world, the Palo Alto networks. Not a lot of people really know MasterCard has been in this game for a long time. So could you tell, like, how did you get here?
Sure. So I'll go back. 1940s, banks were issuing paper instead of money and saying, hey, you can use this piece of paper and it'll be just as good as cash. Bunch of banks got together and said, let's trust each other. Let's be more efficient. Let's have one card. Let's trust each other. We can use one card for many, right? We've always started with trust. We always started with trust no matter what else we decided to do. So when you think about payments, it is all based on trust, and that's all the way back to our beginning. We started, actually, that started in 1944 and moved to 1966, which was when we decided to now become MasterCard of sorts.
Absolutely. So I think trust is the name of the game here, right? Like, and MasterCard kind of acts behind the scenes every time you swipe that card. That's
Wait. It's not every time you swipe a card because the payments ecosystem has evolved. So it is any type of payment transaction, whether it's an online transaction, whether it's a card, whether it's your Apple Watch. You know, there has to be secure solutions to enable all of that.
Yeah, well, where I'm getting to is, we've not seen you in action. When Jeff is in action, how many of you have gone to your LinkedIn page where you've logged in into a different environment or a different machine, and you've gotten that headlight, protecting your account? Please solve this puzzle so we know that you're a real person. So you're trying to make security entertaining, I believe, Jeff, but like, talk to us, like, what are the problems that you're solving? What are your biggest challenges?
Yeah, entertaining just for me. I sit there and watch to make sure you solve all those. I think like Dr. Jay is saying, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that nobody sees and nobody appreciates. And a lot of that is aimed towards building trust, right? So for us, trust is a core operating principle as well. We know that we're not going to grow and thrive and be the business we want to be without building trust with our members, with our customers, with the community in general. And a lot of that is us doing the right thing and building systems that help us do the right thing when no one's looking. And I think it's fun when people get to interact with the parts that we actually build that are customer facing, but there's so much more that happens that isn't.
Well, absolutely. I'm sure this audience appreciates what goes on in the background. Like, we have a lot of people within the industry sitting amongst us here. So, Alisa, coming back to you, like, being a tech leader in the White House, and yeah, that's something that I wanted to bring to the audience, as psyched as I was to hear about it. And during the curation of this panel, I realized that a lot of senior cybersecurity leaders have some background in the Secret Services, the NSA, or the White House, just as yourself. As an outsider, it just makes me wonder, like, how different these two ecosystems are. So how is your life like same, and how is it different transitioning from there to MasterCard?
So the ecosystems are definitely different. I'm not going to pretend like they are the same, but the differences I don't think really matter. So what I found is when we were at, when President Obama had his State of the Union, the State of the Union is like Super Bowl for the government, right? For the White House it is. We work up to that minute waiting for, you know, trying to prepare for him or for any president to give their remarks. We could watch and monitor and see different things happening, IP addresses that we knew were either nation state or, you know, some interest group that was unhappy with a comment based on a comment that was made. So we would see this transcript scrolling and then say, oh, okay, yeah, we expected that IP address. Oh, we expected that one. And then this one over here is a little script kiddie at that time that might have been in their basement. We think about it from now, you go from there to now, we still monitor and see the same thing. I remember seeing things at the White House that I'm still seeing now, those same attacks trying to happen. So the platform has changed, my sector has changed, but the adversary hasn't changed. The threat's still the same. The tools that they're using may be ever so slightly different because I'm in a different space, but the motive is the same. You know, there's so many similarities that we have to break down these silos from saying, oh, you're in entertainment or you're in government. That doesn't matter. We all are seeing the same things, which is why the sharing has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you bet the adversaries are the same. But I mean, when I think about the mindset, right? Like government, the way of thinking about things is frameworks, right? Like, okay, this is our security framework. This is how you set out rules. You set out. Cybersecurity doesn't work like that. The moment you have a fixed framework, the adversary knows about it. And the whole game is like, you know, you need to be ahead of your adversaries.
But that doesn't matter which industry you're in. You have to be ahead, whether it's government, whether it's private sector, public sector. That doesn't even matter. And you talked about frameworks. We're all using frameworks. Government is using frameworks. We're using frameworks. Everyone is using some type of standard. It doesn't matter where you are, what situation you're in, because you're trying to implement best practices and do the best thing. There are other ways where we can do a lot better, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that. And I won't spoil the movie just yet. But there are other ways outside of frameworks. But frameworks are definitely in place and everywhere, and they need to be in place. We have to abide by those frameworks.
Got it. I mean, let's take a step back, right? Like, how has the industry evolved? Like, how are attackers different today than they were previously? How are the attacks different today than they were, say, 10 years ago?
I think Jeff is going to agree with me. Before, it was information security. And then, well, no, I'll go back some because I started out at NSA. I'm a NSA certified cryptographic engineer. And at that time, it was called information assurance. Mm-hmm. Then it moved from information assurance to information security. And now we've moved to cybersecurity, and who knows what it's going to be, you know, by the time Jeff or I retire.
Something with AI.
Something with AI. So that evolution has happened, but there are certain basic principles that still haven't changed. Whether it was called information security, we still were wanting good passwords. I remember even, you know, spam has changed and evolved, right? Before it was the Cupid email that says you're going to get 20 blessings if you send it out to all of your friends with malware attached, right? But now it's spear phishing, right? It was these chain letters first, and now it's spear phishing. And now with LinkedIn, you see a lot of other things. There's fake identities and things like that we all have to grapple with. Jeff, what do you think?
Actually, yeah, Jeff, how have the attackers evolved?
I think you make a great point, Doc. The attacks have really moved from, in my view, where we had attacks against institutions and infrastructure maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. That was the focus. You were going to attack a router or a building or something like that. And then we moved to, you might have attacks against individual devices that any one of us might have, like a laptop, a server we use, maybe our email. And where we are today is it's really gotten more user-centric, more human-centric. Now, instead of me attacking a company like LinkedIn or targeting Microsoft, I'm going to target Jeff or just Dr. J, and see if I can compromise you, or maybe even your personal devices. I can use that to leapfrog into an environment that's very hardened, because we're doing our job, we're maintaining our frameworks, we're keeping ahead of people, we're building trusted, scalable systems. And so now each of us here are the target, right? So now we're getting texts, we're getting suspicious emails, maybe our family is targeted. And I hate the progression of that, but now it's really going down to the individual user.
That's the easiest way for us to be attacked, is by pulling on our heartstrings, by pulling on the things we know and love.
Yeah.
You know, that and trying to break that trust, building upon that. And AI is kind of scaring me with that, but we'll talk about that.
So you're talking about AI, right? Like, I've heard that your models themselves are getting hacked, or they are the targets for attacks. So, I mean, just kind of thinking about, and we've spent the entire day at the Tech Summit talking about AI, and I wanted to kind of minimize, because 6-7 years ago, when people were asking, our clients were asking us, what are the most predominant use cases of AI in finance? Fraud and, you know, identity theft, and these were the key areas that were highlighted then. So this is old for you, right? Like, what are the 2 or 3 key trends that you are thinking about looking forward with how AI is going to kind of evolve and change the face of cybersecurity?
AI, first of all, has increased all of our curiosity. And it is not just our curiosity, our kids' curiosity, which means now it's creating more and more hackers. Whether you're just trying to try it out just to see if you can use it to create a new spear phishing email or something like that, it is now enabling a lot more people with a lot less technology expertise to do a lot more things. So I am thinking about, right now, spear phishing. I'm thinking about deep fakes. Deep fakes are, you know, the people who may be watching this online. If it was a deep fake, they may see me as Beyonce. You know, that is a deep fake. And no, there's no similarity. The similarity is actually, most people say Janet Jackson, but I'm going to say Beyonce. But if you think about it from that perspective, the future is man versus machine. AI is going to make it so that you don't know whether you're speaking to a real person or a machine. And that is because we're bringing all of these things together. We're bringing technology, cybersecurity, convenience, collaboration, all of that together. And we're not going to be able to slow it down.
So how easy is the access to that technology? Jeff will argue that it's really expensive at the moment.
No, Jeff's just not going to say, you're not going to say hacker stuff is expensive. It's
No, but
free on the dark web.
I think the AI tools today to build your own model, if you're a threat actor, that's pretty expensive. It's also expensive for any of us.
But would you build your own model, though? Why would you build your own model?
I'm not a bad guy. I don't know what you're trying to say.
No, I'm saying, why would you build your own model if you can go on the dark web?
No, I think that's a great point.
Grab a model and say, let me try it out.
I think today it's still nascent, but I think the speed of technology is so fast that we're going to be playing this clip of me saying it's so nascent, and then a month from now we'll be like, see, it wasn't that nascent. But I think the important thing is there's sort of 2 ways to look at AI. There's the way where, from an offense and a defense perspective, it is rapidly ratcheting up the complexity of fighting this battle that we fight every day. It's making the bad guys' lives easier. It's making the good guys' lives a little bit easier, and it's just a matter of like who can really keep up. I think, you know, and that pushes a lot of really important trust-related features into products like LinkedIn, where we're saying, hey, not necessarily related just to AI, but in general, we think it's going to be really valuable to have trusted, verified profiles, and to make sure that that's accessible to everyone, and it's no cost. Because you're going to need some indicator that's like, I'm really dealing with the human I think I'm dealing with, or I've got some set of indicators that's going to give me that, because no longer can I just go, look at that face, it's Beyonce or Janet Jackson. Clearly, they really want me to invest in their Bitcoin. The other side of it, though, is where it really helps, I think, the information security industry, in that AI can help us respond to incidents faster, but can also help engineers reach more, right? So we've got this sort of talent gap problem we talk about all the time. It's difficult to bring people in the industry. LinkedIn's very invested in internships and apprenticeships and bringing people that are from disparate backgrounds into this complicated space. one of the things that can accelerate that we're leaning into internally as an experiment is now I can bring somebody in and I can make them a minimally competent security engineer in whatever discipline they're in. If I add AI to their workflow, now I can speed up how fast they can be impactful in my environment, and I can also expand how much they can touch and see in that environment. And that's a huge advantage that the bad guys don't necessarily have yet.
That's a very interesting viewpoint, Jeff. One of the biggest challenges that we talk about, not just cybersecurity, but across industries, is that AI is taking away jobs. And you have a very different and interesting take that actually it is going to help bridge the talent gap that is already prevalent and existing in this really fast evolving industry. So I think that's something that everyone should kind of take back from this session today. Just moving on to the next part of what I wanted to talk about. So according to IBM, the average cost of data breach in the US is about $9.5 million. That's twice the global average. Within industries, healthcare is the most impacted. The average cost of breach is just over $10 million. The dichotomy that position is it's really hard to quantify success, right? And I'm sure a lot of people kind of deal with that issue. How good are you? Like, by how much have you prevented? Like, what is the metric? And I know, Jeff, you felt very strongly about some of the claims that we've seen, like with lists, like the recent Forbes list about the America's most cyber secure companies. So let me ask you this. How do you assess cybersecurity readiness of a company?
I think, first of all, this is why I should never publish things. But I think the least credible way to assess somebody's cybersecurity is by just looking at their website or sort of looking at what you can see of them that's visible to the general internet. I think getting back to this discussion of frameworks, a framework doesn't do security for you, but it certainly helps you focus in on what are your basics and what do you need to get good at scale, whatever your scale might be, whether it's a 100-person company or 100,000 people. That scale and that repetition, it becomes really important. And I think that enables you to look at a couple of the metrics that at like a LinkedIn or a Microsoft scale become really important, which are, how are you, if I pick a baseline metric like patching compliance. We all know we need to keep our laptops and devices and hundreds of thousands of servers we might run patched and up to date so that we're limiting the amount of damage that could happen if there is an incident, or we're limiting the risk surface area. I think one of the things that we can look at as companies is what is the cost to keep that going relative to our revenue or our employee size or even just the budget of InfoSec? And is that staying steady or going down over time, or is it growing faster than the actual revenue growth of the company? I think if you look at indicators in that regard,
what is the number? How much should companies be spending on cybersecurity? And I completely appreciate your thought process because when you look at competitive stretch for how banks are doing on technology, there are no metrics. So you have to kind of pick one measure. But what is an ideal golden number that you can use?
I think, and I can't wait for this to be memorialized and for me to get excoriated about this later, but
this is your opportunity.
No, it's great. Thank you very much. I generally go by the rule of somewhere between 5 and 10% of at least your IT spend, if not your revenue. Right?
And this is at like an early stage, like a growth startup, or how does that evolve over the life?
If you're in a high growth startup, if you're literally a startup, I think that's going to be an inordinate percentage of your R&D or your engineering spend, and that's going to come down over time. And you want it to see that come down over time. If you're in a tech startup in the Valley, you really probably want to see somewhere between 5 and 8% of your engineering spend or headcount be focused on security at the early stages at least.
I think that will tie in with what Ed was suggesting. So I think CTOs are kind of coming in and asking their fair share on the seat on the table. So that's great. Dr. J, your ecosystem runs from large enterprises all the way to small mom and pop stores that kind of accept cards or like accept payments for that matter. How do these different segments' needs differ? Like obviously the risks that say a LinkedIn has versus the next door neighbor mom and pop store, it's different. So how do those needs differ? And secondly, how aware are those smaller companies of these needs for cybersecurity?
I think they're very aware. I think if you look at yourselves and your companies, and I think about us, we're all overwhelmed. So if you can just imagine what small businesses, how they're thinking about it and how they're feeling, oh my goodness. And so I think it's a responsibility that we have as larger businesses, larger companies, to help those small businesses, to help point them in the direction of the frameworks, because Joe's fix-it shop around the corner is going to be like, well, where do I start? What is cybersecurity? Hand me a wrench. You know what I mean? And so we have to kind of do more to help enable them to make sure that they're doing things in the right way, securing things in the right way. We do that at MasterCard through the MasterCard Trust Center. Shameless plug, I have a podcast called Mastering Cyber. It's only 60 seconds that gives you 60 seconds of clear tips. And it's to help regular people, not technologists, not all of us who went to the technology summit, but it's for regular people. It's embedded in the Trust Center, which is free. The Trust Center also has free products and tools that we've partnered with Microsoft, with LastPass, with a lot of different companies to say, hey, for small businesses, give us an offering that we can offer for free that can give them a start. There are things like that that not just MasterCard, but other companies are doing. We've got the Global Cyber Alliance that also sponsors a toolkit like that does that. CISA has a toolkit as well, you know, so we have to make sure that we're pointing those folks in the right direction, because they won't know what direction to go in.
Absolutely. So, and I mean, the central ethos to that thought is also you are as weak as your weakest link, right?
Right.
Like if one entity is compromised, like that could be the entry point for compromising a bigger system.
Right.
So that actually is a nice segue to my next section, which is the need for collaboration. So another big shift that has happened from the yesteryears to now is that this space is the magnitude and the speed of things, the way things are happening, has accelerated, right? So when you could spend months earlier figuring out if the hack happened, and then have the same amount of time to figure out what happened, who did it, and then sit and learn what did we learn from that, right? Things are way quicker and stakes are much higher now. Your stock price could be plummeting. You could be at the next congressional hearing if you have a big breach. So stakes have changed, right? What looks a clear trend to me is that companies need to accept the fact that they can't do it alone. And the beauty of this is one of those rare instances when actually collaborating is beneficial for everyone.
Right.
How much is that realization part of the evolution process? Like where are we in that cycle? Do people really realize? And the dichotomy to share or not to share, like that's a real problem.
We have to collaborate and we have to participate. I was at a dinner 2 nights ago, and the question was asked, hey, is your company using AI? And there were a lot of people in there that were like, no, my company is figuring out the value proposition. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? The hackers are already figuring out, they're not thinking about value proposition, they're testing, they're rolling things out, they're moving just like this. We, on the right side of the world, are very coordinated. We're very process-oriented. We're very solutions-oriented, and we're going to get that solution 100%. And while the adversary is like just rolling out stuff and hoping they're going to hit something, we've got to speed that up. We've got to collaborate. The adversary on the dark web is collaborating. They're giving away stuff for free. They're not saying, no, you're not in financial sector. You're in health. We're not going to share this tool. No, come, get it, tell us, brag, get your street cred, do whatever you need to do, and let's move on and attack the next person. That's how the bad side is working. We, on the good side, have to do the same thing. We're doing it with our ISACs, right? We're doing it with each sector has an ISAC, has a council that gets together with that sector or group of companies that help and share. We've got to do more with that. We've got to do more with public-private partnerships. We can't rely on the government to say, you shout, thou shalt. We have to help participate in all of that. We have to be participants of it, or we will just be sitting back and being impacted by it.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. I think the good news is most organizations are already sharing with some other organizations. Right. The bad news is there's lots of interest in sharing, but there's not a lot of incentive to share. And there's a bunch of risks. So today when we're looking at, there's going to be more regulation in the cybersecurity space, not less, as we go down the road. What I think would help a lot is regulation that gives you safe harbor for collaboration or sharing, especially sharing not just threat information, but here's what happened to us. Here's the details, specifically what happened, how we resolved it, like the entire timeline of what happened, kind of like an NTSB report. That would be great. But today, it's very difficult to share that layer of detail with anybody else that exists in my peer group. And I think once we unlock that, we'll really see a leapfrog of value in the security space.
Yeah, I think just the awareness that you're not alone, like other people are kind of going through the same as well, that possibly kind of allows to take away that stigma or that shame or that element of like discomfort to come out and say that this has happened and like just be aware of it. So my father was a cop, he's retired now, and I kind of grew up with that thought that the bad guys need to get it right just once. The good guys need to get it right all the time. So if you got to get it right all the time, you need a team. And that's kind of the center of what another thing that we should take away from the panel today. I think we're pretty much out of time. So I wanted to last closing remarks, like quick, one piece of advice that both of you will share for companies, for startups, for other companies on how to kind of fight this fight against.
So I'm gonna use an AI spin because that is the biggest thing that everybody's been talking about. That's what the adversary wants us to do. The adversary wants us to focus on AI so that we forget the basics. There's still things that we haven't even shored up in our networks, and we're focused on AI and what we're gonna do and how we're gonna shore up and use the value proposition of AI. In 2020, we were all focused on COVID, and SolarWinds happened. That is what the adversary does. So let's not lose sight of, yes, AI is great, generative AI is great, we've got to use it, we've got to participate in it, but some of us need to remove passwords. Some of us need to implement zero trust. There are lots of other basic foundational things that we need to do so that once AI is implemented, man, it's going to be so good.
So don't go after the shiny toy. You do your homework first, and then you get the shiny toy. Jeff.
I couldn't agree more, but I think something that's near and dear to my heart is this is complicated work, right? This is hard. And to get that done, we need more and more people into this career space. And I think one of the things that I would tell everybody is stop hiring for this career space like you're looking at only the elite Ivy League colleges. Look for people from all walks of life, all career spans, even people transitioning into the InfoSec space that want to learn and invest in them and build programs in your company that can level these people up. We have a fantastic partnership with a company called Europe that takes people that might be a Whole Foods cashier and then helps them train themselves up so they can enter a space as complex as this. We need all the help we can, and especially in InfoSec, we need that diversity of perspective. So I think as long as we learn to focus on the skills people need to be successful and help them be successful in the space, we've got a long lead on the bad guys.
That's such a good point. I started out as a radio DJ. I spent 4 years in the very beginning of my career as a DJ, and guess what? I was deputy CIO of the White House, and now I'm at MasterCard. Like, who would have thought? My parents clearly did not think that was what was going to happen.
You have a live example of what you're promoting. So yeah, we have a model right in the room. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to all of you for joining us for this lovely evening. I also wanted to thank our presenting sponsor, Chrome Enterprise, for making these conversations possible. To rewatch any part of this event, you can return to bloomberglive.com or click on the Bloomberg Technology Summit icon and view it on demand. If you would like more information from Chrome Enterprise, please visit the resources tab on the event website. Please enjoy dessert and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.